Hey everybody, this is Chad Jordan from Sport Clips. I'm the Director of Marketing for Digital Services, and this is another episode of our Hall of Fame podcast. And we have a series called Survive in Advance where we interview stylists, managers, Sport Clips affiliated team members who have survived and made a life anyways in spite of some sort of challenge, whether it's addiction, whether it's illness, disease, cancer, something like that. And so this will be another episode featured around someone's inspiring story. And I thought this would be a perfect person to have on the podcast. So I'm going to have her introduce herself. And so what I want from you, young lady, is your name, your address, your serial number, your name and your store number, and what you do at Sport Clips, that kind of stuff. All right, your turn.
All right. Hi, y'all. I'm Kriss Sparks. My store number is CO130 in Colorado, Longmont, Colorado. I am the current manager there.
And team leaders are Ted and Tina.
Ted and Tina McMurdo. Correct.
Okay. And the reason we have you, and so those watching this via YouTube, in fact, I'm waving at you right now, okay, can see Kriss is dressed in pink, pretty in pink, and she's wearing pink because she is currently undergoing chemo for
breast cancer.
And when were you first diagnosed?
December 1st, 2014.
Okay, so we are coming up on the 5th year anniversary.
Yes, sir.
It's an anniversary nobody wants, but at the same time, it's an anniversary. You're still here, so I don't know if you celebrate those kinds of anniversaries or what, but at least we're looking at 5 years. So let's go through. First of all, you're working with Sport Clips. You're managing. Your location is in what part? Is it Boulder area?
It's in Longmont, Colorado.
Longmont, which is what's that near for us non-Coloradians?
So it's about 45 minutes south of Fort Collins, or it's about maybe a 20-minute jaunt from Boulder.
Okay.
Going east.
And you've been managing a year, but you've been affiliated with Sport Clips longer than that.
Yeah, I've been with Sport Clips as a whole since 2012, 2013, somewhere in there.
Okay, and when you got diagnosed in 2014, were you with Sport Clips?
I was.
Okay, so I think we'll get into a little bit later about the Wayne McGlone Fund, what that is, how that's played a role in your diagnosis and treatment and all that kind of stuff. But I want to talk, I know you got some kiddos, so we want to put a face and a story to illness and to those that are surviving and battling it. So can you give me a little bit about your family, how your family's made up, husband, kiddos, all that kind of stuff?
So I'm married. My husband's name is Brandon. We've been together for 13 years, married for almost 11. We have 4 children. My oldest, Georgia, is in the United States Navy. She's currently stationed in North Carolina. Then I've got a 17-year-old that's graduating high school this year, Andrew. He will be joining the Coast Guard. Then I have a 11-year-old named Thane, a football player, very big into...
Thane, where's that name come from?
So Thane, when I was pregnant with him, my mom gave me a romance novel thing, and I don't read those, and there was a handsome guy there was a handsome cowboy from Wyoming named Thane.
All right.
And so I like the name, just changed the spelling a little bit, but and his middle name actually is Cyrus from Con Air, Cyrus the Virus.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, yep, I love that movie. So, and then my youngest little girl, her name is Belle Star, and she is 9.
Oh, precious. Okay. So, your oldest, Georgia, was she still living at home when you were diagnosed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So she's kind of walked through that process with you.
Yes.
Take me back to you're just living a normal life. Did you argue? I mean, what's going on in November 30th?
Okay.
2014. Okay. You're just whatever.
So actually, about I'd say about 3 months prior, I felt a lump in my armpit, and there's no cancer in my family, so I'd heard all these things about caffeine cysts. If you drink too much caffeine, you can get a cyst. And so I'm like, oh, That's probably what it is.
Are you a fellow Mountain Dew junkie as well?
I am not. Okay. I don't drink soda, but I drink a lot of coffee.
All right. Yeah. And I mean, you're a stylist, so of course you got to have caffeine in one way, shape, or form.
Yep. So.
So did you put off then because you thought?
I did. I ignored it.
You dismissed it.
I did, and if I back up a little bit there, in 2003, 2004, I actually had 2 lumps removed from my breast that were benign. They just called them fat somethings, and they were the size of a quarter, and they were laying right on top of each other. And
had they been discovered in a mammogram, or?
I had actually felt them. They had started off the size of a pea, and I ignored it. And it was slow growing, and then finally they just got to be painful. And so I went into the doctor, and he's like, "Yep, we're going to remove them. We'll check them." And then the doctor had told me after he removed them, it wasn't cancer, but he said, you have several other lumps that are too far down for us to get into. Just keep an eye. Which I promptly forgot. I was in my 20s, so I was like, whatever.
Last thing on your mind.
Don't care. So at that point, and fast forwarding to then, I found the lump. It hurt, and I'd always heard that cancer tumors, when you feel them, they don't hurt. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but it hurt. So I was like, oh, it's a cyst. So we'll just, when I get time. It was always when I get time, I'll just go in. Well, it grew, and
so it really was. I just want to make sure we drive this point home, especially most people listening or watching this podcast will be female stylists.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that you were dismissing it because you were scared it could be cancer and you didn't want the news. It was you really did think it's not a big deal.
I thought it was nothing. I thought that it really was a cyst because cysts hurt, from what I've been told. I've never had one, so. I just assumed it was, and I was busy. I had 4 kids,
right?
And again, cancer doesn't run in my family at all. High blood pressure and diabetes, that's a thing. Cancer, no. So and breast cancer is typically a genetic thing. Yeah. So I just was like, cool. Well, it's nothing. I'll get to it when I get to it. And then it got bigger, and it got bigger within a month. And so in October, I told my husband, I was like, well, I'll just go to our family doctor. He'll tell me it's a caffeine cyst, and we'll move on. And so my husband was like, okay, cool. So I go to...
No one's alarmed at this point.
Nobody's alarmed. Okay. Nobody's worried at all. I go to my family doctor, and I tell him, I got this lump. I know you're not a breast doctor or whatever, but I figure, and he's like, yeah, we can check it out. So they're doing the exam, and he's got a student in with him and the nurse, and he feeling the side of the right side, and he's like, okay. Then he goes and he feels the left side, doesn't feel any lumps in my actual breast, but he felt the lump that I felt in my armpit. Yeah. And he's like, that's really strange. I'm gonna have the nurse feel. So the nurse feels it, and she's like, okay, why don't we just get a mammogram? We'll just check it out. I'm not concerned. Where it's located, that's your lymph nodes.
Right.
We're not really worried. Cool. So we schedule the appointment, and they tell my husband, he comes with me to the mammogram, and he can't come in the back because there's lots of women things going on.
Yep.
But they tell him 45 minutes. We'll be good to go. So we go in. I go and get into the machine, which, funny enough, is for short people. I'm almost 6'1".
Yeah, and I recognize that when we rode the elevator.
Yeah.
And I'm having to look up to have a conversation with you.
And it's built for shorter women, I think, because I actually had to lean over this machine. And the girl that was performing the test, bless her heart, she was probably 19, 20 years old. She couldn't have been very old.
She never had a 6'1" woman come in for this. Yeah.
Nope. And she's looking.
The manual does not describe how to handle this situation.
Right. She's just kind of looking at me. So we get it situated. She does the scan. She leaves the equipment on me, and I look over at her, and she looks scared. And I was like, "Did you do it wrong?
Right. Right.
What's the problem? Just take it off and let's talk." And she said, "Ma'am, I'll be right back." And I was like, "Okay." So I'm still attached to this machine, just standing there, and I'm like, Well, if I was embarrassed
awkward,
before,
yeah.
you know? And so a doctor comes in and they said we have to scan again. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe
That 19-year-old messed up, didn't I?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm getting a little irritated because I'm standing there and I'm an on-the-go person. I don't like to sit still. So they scan again, and she's like, all right, if you want to go wait in the waiting room, we'll be with you in a minute. I said, okay, well, can my husband come back? No, he can't come back because there's women all over here with their robes and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So by now, we're already reaching almost 2 hours that I've been back there.
For a 45-minute procedure,
procedure. And I'm like, oh my God, this is taking forever. Still, I'm not concerned. I'm still thinking, well, they found another lump that's nothing, or, you know, it's a cyst. Maybe the cyst is pushing on something and they're like, oh, we need to fix this, whatever. So then another doctor comes in and she calls me to the back. She goes, we want to do a ultrasound. And I said, okay. Can my husband come back for that? Of course he can. So he comes back. I'm laying on the table and, you know, I've got my left arm up. For an hour, she is doing this, and she's
this ain't the 19-year-old anymore either.
Not
Somebody
the
knows what they're doing.
Yep, yeah. She's in her 50s probably, and she's like, "Does it hurt?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know, when you're going over it, be gentle because that hurts. You know, I know you're supposed to push, but it hurts." And she says, "Okay, well, the doctor that looks at those things, I don't know what they're called. She said she'll be right with you." And I said, okay.
Radiologist or the oncologist or
the ultrasoundologist.
Okay.
Maybe?
Oh yeah, it works for me.
Okay. And so my husband's sitting there and he's like, what is going on? And I said, I don't know. It was supposed to be 45 minutes. And he's like, we're now coming on 3 hours. And I said, all of this for a stupid cyst. You know, this is dumb. And he's like, yeah, well, hopefully they hurry up because we had left our youngest daughter with one of my friends while we had our fast appointment. And I was like, make sure you call her to let her know it's taking forever. So then the doctor comes in. She goes, well, I'm going to show you something. And so she pulls up the screen, and the spot that I was worried that I thought was a cyst was black. And then inside my breast itself, there were 3 more that were black. And I was like, okay, what is that? And she goes, well, I don't know, but it's concerning. And I said, okay, concerning like more cysts, concerning like I have clogged ducts. Like, I don't know. And
are you still not even thinking it could be cancer just because of the family history?
Yeah. And she goes, well, we need to do a biopsy. And I was like, okay. I said, well, you know, I work for the next 2 weeks, so. And she goes, no, we need to do a biopsy. And I said, okay, well, I don't have a day off for like a couple weeks. Right. And she's like, no, like we need to do this within the next few days. And I was like, okay, I'll see what I could do. I got a hold of my manager at the sport club I was working at then. And I said, well, they want to do a biopsy. And she's like, oh, okay. And are you concerned? No. And so I asked, you know, when I could get in. Day before Thanksgiving. That was the day they could get me in. And I was like, okay. So
one of the busiest days of the year. That's the part that you didn't really fill in there. But day before Thanksgiving.
Day before Thanksgiving. And I was like, I'm sorry to do this to you, but, you know, they want me here in the morning and they want to get this taken care of. And she's like, okay. So I go in for the biopsy. I don't know how many people have had one of those, but they are not comfortable. They hurt. They have to numb you first with a shot, and the shot hurts. And then if any of the tissue around isn't deadened, when they go to put that little puncher thing in there, you feel everything.
Yeah.
And so they decided to do a biopsy on both sides. And they mostly just biopsied tissue on this side, but then they took some from the lymph node on this. It turns out to be the lymph node, but from what I thought was the cyst, and then from the 3 spots that she could see on my left side. And that took about a couple hours. I had to be wrapped in bandages, like this whole nonsense. So that was Thanksgiving. And then they said, we'll let you know within a couple weeks.
What was Thanksgiving like?
So
are you worried? You spend the whole holiday worrying, or
at that point now I'm getting a little worried because you don't do a biopsy for no reason, you know. And then I was like, well, if it is cancer, it's not going to be that bad because it's, you know, they saw it
isolated. They probably caught it quickly.
Yeah, not going to be a problem. Thanksgiving, we were with my husband's family for Thanksgiving, and everybody's asking questions. What's going on? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't have any idea. They just said they'll get with us, and I'm assuming no news is good news. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And they hadn't given you a timeline on how long it could potentially take to get the results?
They said a couple weeks, and so I was like, okay, 2 weeks.
And you're thinking a couple weeks, but sooner if there's a problem. But it's a couple of weeks, they'll process the paperwork.
Because I'm like, well, if it's cancer, they just slap it on a little disc. They
find
look
it
at
and rush through and let you know.
They call me the next day, and so 1 week went by, nothing. And my husband's like, have you heard anything? Nope, haven't heard a word. So I think we're fine.
We're out of the woods,
we're good. December 1st, I was at work, and I was telling the assistant manager at the time, I was like, I haven't heard anything. I think that's pretty good. And she's like, yeah. And I said, I'm going to go check my phone, see if there's any messages. And as I opened my locker to grab my phone, the doctor calls, like in that instant. Oh, and I was like, oh, cool.
What are the chances?
All right.
Yeah.
So go into the break room, and I said, hello, Dr. Felix. And he said, oh, hey, how's it going? And I said, good. And he's very chirful.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, how was your Thanksgiving? And I said, I wasn't real hungry. I had that for Thanksgiving. My husband's family does cabbage burgers, kraut burgers for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It's their thing.
Yeah.
I don't eat that.
Are they German or what's going on?
They are German descent.
All right, that must be what they do. All right.
And they love them. So I ate, off the relish tray. I don't like kraut burgers.
Okay,
so
I'm with you there.
It's not a thing for me. So I'm telling him about that.
You're making small talk. And he's got this earth-shattering news kind of burying the lead.
Yeah, and he's so peppy. And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, sweet.
Yeah,
awesome.
You're relieved.
We're good. We'll just chat a little bit. And then he said, so here's the thing. You have cancer.
Oh.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Just
he ripped the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. There was no... And I know that it probably hurt him a lot more because he'd been my doctor for quite a while. He was my husband's doctor first, and then he ended up being my doctor. And I was like, and I don't think I got it. Like, he said, yep, it's cancer. And I was like, okay. And he said, well, the patient care representative is going to be calling you. I said, okay. And he said, she's going to be setting up all your appointments for the next week. And I was like, okay, but I got to work.
Right. Priorities, hello. Work over health.
And he's like, no, you need to go to these appointments. We got to figure out, your stages and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, stage? I don't understand what you mean. And he said, do you need to call Brandon and have him call me? I'll stay late at the office if you want to come by and see me. Because I live in Loveland and I was working in Fort Collins at the time. So about 25 minutes from home is where I was working. And his office was about 20-30 minutes from where I was working. And I was like, no, I think I'm fine. And he goes, okay, well, I'm staying here late, so have Brandon call me if he's got any questions. You call me if you got any questions, and then we'll just kind of take it from there. I said, okay. And then I just kind of stood there. And the assistant manager came back, and she's like, are you all right? You don't look very well. And I was like, dude, I got cancer. I got to go. Mm-hmm. And she's all, what do you mean? And I said, I got to go. I need to leave right now. And she said, okay, I'll just clean up your stuff. You just go ahead and go. And I was like, how am I going to go home? And she's like, you drove here. And I was like,
yeah, but you're in shock.
Okay.
Really.
So I can drive.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's at work. I'm walking out to the parking lot, and I called my husband, and he's like, hey, what's up? He's a mechanic. And he's like, hey, what's up? I don't have much time. And I was like, I got cancer. I'm going home. And he was all, what? And I said, I got cancer. I'm going home. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, I don't understand. And I was like, I love you. Bye. And I hung up, and I remember getting in my vehicle, and I sat there for a minute, and I was like, cancer. Okay. So, I mean, you can take a pill. I've seen stuff on TV.
Yeah.
My biggest concern was losing my hair. My hair was past my waist. And that was all I could.
And had it been your whole life? Had you been one of these long
entire life? Yeah. I've never had short hair in my life, and it was my strength, I guess, is what you would say. And so, I was like, man, I don't want to lose my hair.
Right.
And not even thinking about what else is going to happen to me. I don't want to lose my hair.
And it's what I found is it's not a vanity thing.
No.
It's a security blanket kind of, right?
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, I never did anything with it. I didn't braid it. I didn't put it in a ponytail. It just hung straight.
Right. It's part of who you are. So when you lose it, it's losing part of yourself.
Me. Yeah. Yep. And I remember driving to Loveland. I don't remember anything. I mean, honestly, I could have been swerving all over the road. I don't remember crying. I'm not a crier. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember being emotional at all. It was just matter of fact, this is what's going on. And I got to my husband's. I decided to go to my husband's work instead of going home. And I pulled up to his shop, and he came out, and he gave me a hug, and he told his boss I'm leaving. And he's like, are you okay? And as he's talking to me, the patient care lady calls me. Mm-hmm. And she said, these 3 days, these are your appointments. You have to meet with a surgeon. You have to meet with a plastic surgeon. And you need to meet with an oncologist. All like that within 3 days. I actually met with the plastic surgeon before I met with my oncologist. And got it all set up. We had to go home and tell my kids. And that's
what that was going to be my next question. So because you were really blunt with your husband,
yes.
Just because you're in a state of shock.
Yep.
But now you got 4 kiddos.
Yep.
Who you're their only mother.
Yep.
You're all that they know.
Yep.
How and you couldn't, and you had to approach it differently.
Yeah.
So you gather what do you do?
So we got home, and my oldest Georgia, she had just got home from
She's
hanging
in
out
high school or something at that age, right?
Let's see. So
5
years ago, she was in the 8th grade.
Okay.
So that makes sense. So it's middle school.
Uh-huh.
And then my oldest son was in the 6th grade. And then my youngest son was in
pre-K or something.
Kindergarten, 1st grade. Because my little girl was in preschool. Because I remember all that happening. She got preschool early. So she was in preschool. And I was standing in the bedroom. And she came in and, typical teenage stuff. And I've always been blunt with her. I've always no nonsense, and this is how it is. My boys are mama's boys. Mm-hmm. My daughter is exactly like me, no emotion. This is how it is. And I looked at her and I said, well, it is breast cancer. Hopefully I don't have the gene. And she was like, yeah, I hope so. I don't want to get cancer. And I was like, yeah, I don't want you to get cancer either. So let's just hope that I don't have the gene.
Mm-hmm. That's your first conversation about it? Like that's how it goes down?
That was how it was. She walked out of the room pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I know that she went to go
She tried to be tough in front of mom. Be like, oh, yeah, I hope I don't get it too. But inside she was devastated.
She was crumbling. So then went out to the living room, and my oldest son was out there. And he knew something was wrong. And I was like, hey, buddy, we got to tell you something. And he's like, no, I don't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, apparently I had cancer. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how bad it is. And he's like, you're my hero, Mom. You're going to be good. You're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay.
Heroes always make it.
Yeah. And he's like, you're my mom. You're not going anywhere. The little guys, telling them that we told them I was sick. I didn't say cancer.
Right.
Cancer is a scary word.
Yeah.
I said, Mama's sick. I'm going to have to get some medicine. My alarm seems to be going off.
Are they asking, how did you get it?
Could
we catch it? Are they doing
it was one of those, like the flu? Like,
right.
Is that kind of thing? My little girl, she was like, I don't get it. You're sick. You got to go to the doctor then, Mom. You got to get better. And I was like, we're going to get better. And still trying to figure it out. I'm trying not to cry in front of them. My husband is crying. Mm-hmm. He is more emotional, or he was more emotional with the whole situation. So he's crying, trying to walk away so they don't see Dad crying, because if Dad's crying, then something's really going on. And so I don't really remember the rest of that day. Like, it was just here it is. I think we told as many people in our inner circle as we could. Mm-hmm. Let his parents know. My dad's long gone, so it was my mom, and I told her, and she is unemotional. So she was like, okay, well, you just let me know what you got to do, and we'll just kind of move on from there. And she was like, well, I don't know where you... The other thing was that she saw, I don't know where you got it, because we don't have that.
Right.
And I was like, well, it's not contagious. It made me laugh at the time, which it wasn't funny, but it was funny. I'm like, well, I can't... It's not like you gave it to me or anything, it was...
Nor was it your fault.
Right.
It's not like you did something to deserve it.
Yeah,
It's
and it was just
cancer.
one of those things. And then we went and the next few days with the doctors, the plastic surgeon first, and for women, that are in their 30s. And I was 34 at the time, and all the doctors kept saying, you're too young for cancer. Right. I don't even know how you got it. Like, and I was like, I don't know. Did I catch a cold and it turned? It's not, if you've never had to deal with it, you think you can catch it even if they say it's not contagious, or at least that was my thought process. I was like, well, who have I been around? Who have I, come in contact with that has been sick? How did this happen if it's not a genetic thing? And so we went and saw the plastic surgeon, and of course, walking into a plastic surgeon's office is always funny for me because there's what they can do for you. They can make your breast bigger, they can make your butt smaller, they can do, all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm not even in here for anything good.
Right.
Like
Right.
I'm in here to talk about what reconstruction of something that I don't even know what can be done, and they just wanted me to meet him. So I put a face to the doctor of what he will be doing afterwards. Then I met with the surgeon, and I had to get a port, and the type of chemo that I was getting, if it came in contact with my skin or if it leaked outside my veins, it would destroy tissue, burn, it was a big thing.
The cancer or the chemo?
The chemo.
Okay, yeah.
So the chemo was very dangerous anyways, but if they just put an IV in or anything, there was always potential for something very bad. Yeah. So he was trying to tell me about this port that he was going to be putting in, and I said, okay, I don't understand, I'm going to have this metal or this stuff inside my body. And he said, yeah, it's just this little triangle, and in the insert, in the middle of it is where they'll stick a needle in, and then that's how you're going to, and it's a central line, and it goes, I have one now, it goes up into, your main artery and everything, and that's how they'll deliver everything. And I said, okay, well, I don't really like surgery. So is this going to be like I have to stay overnight? Can I just get it and go home? Like, I just don't want to be here.
Yeah, how invasive is it?
And he said, it's going to take about an hour and everything will be just fine. I said, okay. And then I met my oncologist, and I happened to get sick right before I met her. It was kind of a cold, but it was a weird cold. It was like with flu symptoms, and I was very tired. And it was almost like my body finally found out it had cancer, and just now all of a sudden I'm getting sick. I went in, and she was emotional about it. She was like, "You're young, and you have kids, and you have."
She's like, "It's not fair.
It's not fair."
I want to. And who do I blame?
Right, and she's like, "It's okay if you're angry," and I was like, "Can we just?" I said, I don't want to talk about emotion. I just want to get this done with. Tell me what my treatment is, and let's get this ball rolling. And she said, well, we got to get your port in, and then as soon as your port's in, we'll start your chemo. And I said, okay. So what are my side effects going to be? I'm going to lose my hair. And she said, you're going to lose your hair. Yeah. She said the type of chemo that you're doing.
Were you kind of keeping your fingers crossed?
I was.
That's why you lead with that.
My husband's mom, her best friend, had breast cancer. She took pills and never lost her hair. So I'm like, okay. Maybe
I'll be the lucky, unlucky person.
Right. And they also have this thing, it's called cold cap therapy, where you can basically wear an ice cap on your head, and it supposedly freezes everything in here. It basically stops the cells from pushing the hair out, or I didn't really look into it all that much, but I was like, I don't really want to wear ice cap on my head all the time. It just isn't, just to save my hair. And I'm like, okay, I've had my hair for 34 years. I'll just cut it short, and then as it falls out, it won't be too bad. And she's like, you gain weight because we have to give you steroids so you're not sick. Yeah. I said, great, so I'm going to be bald and fat. And she's like, well, you're really not taking this.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, Well, I mean, basically
You're
what you're telling
processing
me,
this in bite-sized chunks,
yes,
though. So.
yes, and I'm like, so you're telling me I'm going to look like basically Uncle Fester is what I'm going to look like, and she's like, no, and I was like, it's okay. I just want to grasp on what I'm going
Right.
to be. I was like, I hope I have a good shaped head, because that's all I'm worried about now is, ooh, what if I have lumps?
Good thing you do.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And she's looking at my husband like, this girl's nuts.
Right.
Like, there's something wrong here. And he's like, she processes differently, different stuff. So I went and got the port surgery. And actually, funny enough, right before I was to get the port surgery, the Dr. Dubs was supposed to do it. He was jumping on a trampoline and hurt his back.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So now I have to have his partner do it.
Who you don't stranger, but
don't
you
know him.
Yeah.
Met him for the first time in the OR, and it went fine. And they're telling me, 1% of people this stuff happens to, or 1% of people all of this. I found out very early that I am the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
I did my first round of chemo. Hair fell out 2 weeks after I started.
Did you end up
chemo.
shaving your head beforehand?
My husband shaved it for me, and then it hurts when it falls out. So it's a very weird. It's not like pulling on the hair. It really is like the hair is dying, and it's letting you know that it's dying, and so it hurts.
It doesn't want to die.
It doesn't want to die.
Leave.
And my husband had shaved me all the way down to basically just stubble, just like a 5 o'clock shadow. And I was wearing a stocking cap, and I could feel it hurting. And I went to his work, and I'm like, my hair really hurts. And I took it off, and as I took it off, like little flakes of hair were coming off, and I was like, man, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't even catch a break there.
Right? It's not going to stay. And then I started treatment. Very first day in the infusion room, they sit me with 80-year-old women that are dying.
Right.
And they're actually dying. Like they're just there as a comfort measure. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you couldn't sit me over there by myself. I have to sit. So I'm trying to be nice, but at the same time I'm irritated because I'm like, this isn't.
And you're not feeling good.
I'm not feeling good.
You're not in a good place.
And the nurse comes over, and she was the head nurse. Her name was April. And she said, she hands me this menu, and she goes, order whatever you want. You and your husband can have lunch while you're sitting here for the next few hours. And I was like, fantastic. Let's order up. Well, what they don't tell you is you probably shouldn't. Or you should order lightly.
Small,
because you are not going to like what happens afterwards. But I was like, club sandwich, where I'm ordering, desserts. My husband is barely eating anything, but I'm ordering to the nine. I mean, all the stuff. They said I could order whatever, so I did. And I'm sitting there, and I'm bored. I didn't bring a book, so I was just kind of sitting there.
It's your first time.
Right.
You don't know what to.
And I'm looking at the TVs, and there's no cable, so it's all local stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe watch some Jerry Springer or something while I'm sitting here. Got bored of that, and just was trying to fall asleep. Then I started getting really cold, and then it felt like my head was in a cloud, like I had cotton wrapped around my face. It was a very weird feeling, and I was like, oh, I wonder something's wrong. And she's like, no. This is how it is. Some people feel it right away. Others, it takes hours. Sometimes it can take days.
But you're, again, the 1%.
I'm the 1%. So I was feeling it pretty quickly. Finished, went home. For the next couple days, I believe it was twice a week. It could have been once a week. I don't really remember. My whole timeline on that was all messed up. For the first round of it, I went quite a bit, I believe. And then, still seeing the oncologist, getting my blood checked, making sure that, the chemo wasn't killing me, which is what it does.
Yep.
That's what it's doing.
It's poison.
It's poison. Yeah. And feeling my teeth start to feel effects, which is the weirdest thing. Getting cavities or getting, it feels almost like they're starting to fall out at the root.
Yeah.
And was another thing. I'm like, oh my God, now I'm gonna lose my teeth. I'm gonna lose my teeth, my hair, and gain weight. So I am going to look amazing.
My goodness.
I'm telling you. So we get through the first round of chemo, and then they tell me that I have to be on this stuff called Taxol. And I was like, okay. And they said, now you're either going to be able to go through it just fine, or you're going to struggle a little bit. But again, only 1% have a problem with this. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh,
what are the chances?
Watch this, you know. So she gets all in her battle gear. She's got this mask on and these long gloves and this cover. She covers herself completely.
Like a hazmat suit.
Yeah. Almost. And I'm like, is my husband even allowed to be here? And she's like, oh, he's fine. He just, no touching or anything. And I was like, what are you guys putting in me? She gives me the medicine, and almost instantly I was like, my chest hurts. And she's like, okay, what do you mean it hurts? And I was like, I don't feel very well. I can't breathe. Mm-hmm. And like all of a sudden,
is it burning or what? Is it pressure?
What's felt the pain? Like my heart was being ripped. Like it was a ripping pressure, like smother. It was all this weird stuff going on. And she's like, I remember looking at her, and then my eyes started to close. And she's like, wake up, Kriss, are you okay? And I was like, I can't breathe. Mm-hmm. And she stops it. She starts running saline through. She's calling the emergency people. And she's like, we have an allergic reaction to this Taxol. We need to get our veins flushed, and we need to find out, are
you conscious, or is your husband later telling you all this?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I remember her screaming at one of the other
orderly
nurses.
Somebody,
and they're like, get, medical stat, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what is happening? And then I was like, I'm dying.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. I'm actually dying. And no, there was no tunnel or any of that. Yeah. But I remember seeing my kids. I was like,
because you didn't say goodbye. It's not like you thought this was going to be.
No, and I'm thinking, they're at school. Yeah. I need to call them. I need to, and it was fast because they got it flushed or whatever really quickly. And the nurse is like, she's talking to somebody, and she's like, no, she can't get any more. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want any more. What is happening? Mm-hmm. Please don't give that back to me. And she's like, well, they want to see if, now that it's been through your system, can we do it again? Right. And I was like, no, you cannot do it again.
It was the introductory offer that was the problem. But
and I was like, no, I'm good, thank you. And she's like,
I'd rather take my chances with something else.
We're good.
Yeah.
So then she tells me I need to see my oncologist. So my oncologist comes in, and she's like, oh,
I'm going to pause it.
Okay.
That was a good stopping. It was a good pausing moment.
Yeah, of course.
But they're waiting. I'm going to just tell them I needed more time.
Sure.
I don't want them to go somewhere else.
Oh.
Grab me lunch out here. Okay. What's up with the card? You're kidding. bring up those waters and Mountain Dew. Well, there's Mountain Dew in the bag as well. I don't need the Mountain Dew, but I do need the waters. And just tell them to give them to the folks that are in the hallway right there.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were.
You're not at all.
Okay.
No, I what I didn't do is budget the time it would take me to set the podcast up when I told them, just come around 2. I should have told them 2:30.
Sorry, this is a long story. I'll wrap it up.
You're fine.
Okay.
No, you're fine. And this is good too because you're chronicling the part of the journey that we often will see people skip, and they'll get to how they coped through the years or whatever.
Right.
And I hate that you're reliving it, but I appreciate what the steps and the fact that it's not like, people get diagnosed with cancer and you're like, okay, all right, we'll go to chemo in a couple days and this is what it is, and I'll go once a month or whatever. And you're actually informing people that it's not like that at all. And anybody battling cancer, it is a battle. It is a struggle. It's a war that you're in. And just like in a real war where there's shots are fired and all this stuff is engaging, you're constantly having to duck and cover yourself. So you're great.
Okay.
So I pause it here. You're getting ready to tell me about, I think your first oncologist or
my oncologist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll pick up.
Okay.
And I definitely the family side I'm interested in how Sport Clips, the Wayne McGlone, how all that, and then we'll follow up with. I do want the reality of what you're facing.
Okay.
We're not going to sugarcoat like, hey, everybody gets cancer, survives forever, and it's
Right.
once you get chemo, things
You're
are
good to go.
they cure it all. And that's why we need more breast cancer research and more funding and all those sorts of stuff.
Okay.
And then we'll finish with the fun 10.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, and you were saying.
Okay, so my oncologist told me that I had to have the Taxol. That was a big part of my treatment. And she said, but we're going to give you Taxotere, which is the synthetic version. It's derived from the synthetic instead of from the plant. More people are able to do that than are able to do Taxol. If you're allergic to one, you're better off having the generic version.
There's no way you're allergic to
Right.
both, right? I almost feel like I know where this is going, and we haven't talked about it, but okay. All right.
I get it. I have no problems. There's no chest problems whatsoever.
All right.
Yep. Next day I wake up, my hands are 5 times the size they are.
Oh, no.
My feet are 5 times the size they are. My rings are on, and I can't get them off.
Oh, no.
And I mean, I have rings.
And
all
had they
over
said that was, did they warn you that could be a side effect? Because you would have taken rings off had you known that.
Yep, nothing. Nope.
Oh,
no.
my gosh.
There was really no actual side effects. So I'm looking, my hands are purple.
Yeah.
Because of how swollen they are. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? I call the hospital. They said, go to the burn unit. And I was like, but I wasn't, I don't understand. Okay, so I travel to Fort Collins to go to the burn unit in Fort Collins. They're looking at my hands and like, we don't even know what we're supposed to do with these. Like, we don't know how we can put some ice on them maybe. And I was like, tried that, already stuck my hands in the freezer. They're not coming down. And they're like, you are very allergic to whatever it is that they're giving you. And I said, well, I'm already allergic to the one. I can't be allergic to the other. And she's like, well, you are. Mm-hmm. I said, well, that's fantastic. I get a hold of my oncologist and she's like, well, we can't have you take Taxotere because, it's making all your joints swell up and we just can't do that. So we have to go back to the original one, but we have to put you in the ICU to do it. And I was like, okay. And she said, so instead of giving you 50 milligrams at a time, we'll take it down to 10 every hour. And I was like, so I'm going to have to be in the hospital for 36 hours? She said, yeah. Mm-hmm. I said, okay.
Just what you wanted, more hospital time.
That's great stuff. So they put me in ICU. I get a 36-hour drip of chemo. I have to do this once a week for 12 weeks. Mm. In the meantime, my ports stop working. And those don't stop working.
Only in 1% of people.
And 1% of people.
Yeah,
they kept saying this, and my husband's like, y'all need to stop saying that. It was on St. Patrick's Day. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I wish I was Irish. And so I had to get a new port put in. I get through I do all the chemo. I don't have any more complications after that. I just have to go once a week, every Tuesday morning. I shouldn't say I don't have any more complications. In April, I walked in.
2015.
Of 2015. I walk in. Patsy was my nurse. She was there for me the entire time of having to stay in the hospital. And she always brought me a coffee. She always had a coffee right there waiting for me when I would come in. And she's like, all right, let's take your blood work and then we'll get you started on your chemo. And I was like, okay. And I'm talking to her about, the days, everything's going on since I saw her the previous week. And she's like, how are you doing? I said, oh, fine, just another day, another 36 hours of being here. She takes my blood and she puts a stat on it because your levels have to be at a certain spot in order to get chemo. If they're too low, you can't. Mm-hmm. If they're too high, there's a problem. There's an issue unless they're perfect. So they get a call almost immediately, within whatever time frame. And she's like, no, that's incorrect. I'll take some more blood, send it to you. Let me know. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she goes, there's some kind of weird mix up at the lab. Let's take your blood again. Okay. So she takes my blood again. In the meantime, we're sitting there talking and chatting. And, I had to have these swab things for my mouth because it dries out out your mouth real bad.
Did you get throat sores and all that stuff?
I never got sores.
Okay.
I really was lucky with that, but it was very dry. Mm-hmm. And she gets a call and she's like, okay, I'll notify the crash team. And I was like, notify the what? And she's like, hold on, we need to get your oncologist. So I'm like, no, Patsy, what's going on? And she said, how are you even sitting here? And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, you walked in here. Nobody brought you in here. Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, I walked in here. She goes, how tired are you? And I was like, I'm tired. Yeah. But I walked in, what's going on? And she's like, you should be in a coma. And I was like, what do you mean?
From?
My blood cells had dropped so low below the marker that I should have been in a coma. And I was like, well, I'm not, so we're fine. And she's like, we're not fine. We have to do a blood transfusion. And I was like, no, I don't want somebody else's blood in me.
And this is another time you've not told the kids.
Nope.
You haven't said any
Nothing.
Sort of goodbyes.
No, I chemo had been going so well at that point. Now that we had got it to where I was on a drip, I wasn't really having any issues, and I'm like, I don't want somebody else's blood. And they're like, we have to. And I'm a double negative, so I can only have that blood, which is hard. Because
you're in the 1%
because I'm the blood 1% of the blood type. And so she's like, it's on its way. We need to get all these monitors on you. And I'm like, no, I have family coming to see me. I don't want them to walk in and see all the stuff. And she's like, that's too bad. Yeah. I mean, this is how it is.
Trying to save your life here.
Yeah, I'm calling my husband. I'm like, I have to have a blood transfusion. And he's like, what? What's happening? And I'm like, apparently I'm supposed to be in a coma. Yeah. And they get the blood, and blood is cold when it's going into you, which was the creepiest thing ever. They tried to wrap a towel so that it wouldn't touch my skin, but you can feel it through. The line has to go over your arm and into your chest. And like the whole time I wanted to throw up because I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting somebody's blood. Yeah. And what if it's an ex murder? Or what if it's, maybe their genetic stuff is going into me. Yeah. Weird things that you think about at the time. Calling people and letting them know, hey, I'm supposed to be in a coma. Yeah. You should probably come and see me. Mm-hmm. It went fine. I didn't have any issues. But I had to wait 2 weeks after that in order to go again. So that was a delay. Then one night while I was in the hospital, like it was probably about 3 weeks later, I was sleeping and all of a sudden I woke up and I couldn't breathe. And my chest hurt, and it was that same feeling all over again of the anaphylactic whatever that was happening from it. And I'm punching the button, and I'm screaming, and I'm like, somebody help, somebody help. And the lady comes on, she's like, how can we help you? Right. And I was like, I'm dying. Yeah. Somebody's got to get in here. The nurse rushes in, and she's like, and she cussed, and she was like, holy, and I said, what? And she's all, why is this set at 50? It's supposed to be at 10. And I was like, what? And she goes, we need to find out. And she's calling people. And I'm like, I didn't touch it.
Right.
And come to find out a nurse had come in who works with chemo or whatever. I don't know
Was
who
she
she
19 years old and had previously
Right.
been a radiologist?
Right. Didn't even think of that connection. No, she had actually worked with chemo before, and because it's supposed to be set on a certain amount, she had come in to check on me or something, and without looking at my chart, she turned it up. Unfortunately, she lost her job that night. They actually fired her.
I can imagine.
So after that, it was smooth sailing until I had radiation. I had the radiation turn my skin into spider webs. It was coming off in just little wispies of stuff.
So is this stages like you had to do the chemo first?
I had to do chemo, then I had to do
radiation. Could only go for so long, before it really would.
It doesn't do anything. Yep.
And then the radiation.
Then I had the radiation, which was not bad. I mean, I went and I laid in a thing, and they gave me a sunburn, and then I moved on. At that time also that I had gotten a lump in my throat, and I had seen an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he said it's not cancer, and even if it is, you're on chemo, it's going to kill it.
It's killing everything. Yeah.
Well, that's not true. There are different types of chemo for different types of cancer. But he said it was fine, so I ignored it and went about the rest of my treatment. I had a double mastectomy. I had chest expanders put in that got infected, so I had to have another surgery. I had several surgeries, just kind of going fast forward. I had a lot of surgeries. I've had about 30 surgeries since I was diagnosed. All leading to some kind of infection, or the skin started to turn black and they had to cut away skin. The port stopped working. The too much fluid was in somewhere. All of these things were going on at this time. I had in 2016 in May, I had my revision. I had to wait a full year from my I just lost the word, radiation. I had to wait a full year before I could get reconstruction. And I decided that I wanted to use my own tissue. My body rejects.
You already had the blood
everything.
of an axe murderer running through your veins, so you don't want to risk it anymore.
I don't want implants in case they fail. I don't want any of that stuff. So they did a thing called a deep flap, which they take your stomach and your tissue and they take cells from your abs, and then they rebuild everything. Well, I had complications from that surgery. I had to use a walker for a couple months. My tubes got infected. The drain tubes got infected. I was going back to my mastectomy. The doctor came out. So this whole time, looking on it, before he even did the surgery, they told me that I was stage 2B. So 2B, basically, you're a little further along.
Yeah.
Some lymph nodes are detected, nothing too bad, nothing we can't handle. After the double mastectomy, he came in and he said, unfortunately, it's gotten to your lymph nodes, all of them.
Yeah.
The central node is fully full of cancer. Every node that I pulled, or every whatever thing that I pulled, is full of cancer. You're actually stage 3C, and if we find any more, you're terminal. And so
this is 2016.
This was in 2015 when I had the double mastectomy. So a year after being diagnosed, he told me that I'm basically going to die. It's never going to go away because it got into my lymph nodes and because of where they go in the body.
Right, they travel take stuff everywhere.
It just the cells are just dormant, and we'll never know. You can't map individual cells.
Now, do they give you a timeline? Is there a... Okay.
No.
So you could be 80 years old at some point, and...
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But I had the double mastectomy, and then I had the reconstruction. And then 2 months after reconstruction, the lump in my throat, I was like, I got to see somebody. So I went to a different guy. And he said, well, it's starting to push on your vocal cords, so we're just going to go ahead and take it out. I still had the drain tubes from my reconstruction, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to have another surgery.
Great.
Go to have the surgery. He takes out the left side of my thyroid along with this lump. And he came out and he told my husband, it's not cancer. It's just a lump. And my husband's like, thank God. Yeah. Finally some good news after all of this. 2 weeks later, he calls and he said, "I am so sorry, but it's cancer." And I was like...
Did it change into cancer over the course?
And he said, because of how it was located, they still had to send the sample away for somebody to be detected. And because of how it was situated, he didn't look at that side of it or something, or I don't honestly know. He just said, "We've got to get the other side out and you have to do R1N1 therapy." And I was like, "Okay, is that chemo?" And he goes, "No, you have to swallow a radioactive pill and we have to make you radioactive."
Oh, what?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
That's a thing. That's a thing. And I said...
Oh, wait, and is it a thing where you can't be around family and...
Nobody can come near me. Nobody can come near me. And I was
You are
like,
literally radioactive.
I'm radioactive. I took video of the room. Everything was covered. If I brought it in with me, it couldn't leave with me. So my husband, before they gave me the pill, they let me say goodbye to everybody, give kisses. He bought me a stuffed animal in the gift shop that I could just have while I was there, but I would have to throw away before I left. Mm-hmm. And I had to be by myself. Like, they came in the bird flu suits and everything.
What's the time process?
So it can get out of your system. They have to use one of them little Doppler things before you're allowed to leave. It was a...
Jeez.
It was a thing.
Like you went through a nuclear blast or something.
Yep. And they came in with their suits. I had nothing on. And I was like, shouldn't I,
right,
should I wear
I'm
something
or
what? They opened this metal chest and like this smoke comes out. It was cool.
Like from sci-fi.
But it was like a sci-fi thing. And they said, you have to grab the pill, you have to grab the water, you have to drink this pill. And I was like, okay. So I did all that, and then they were like out. Mm-hmm. They were gone. I had a little slot that
they took one of those hazmat showers afterwards. They had to get washed down, and here you are.
And I'm just sitting here.
Yep, popping the pill.
That's cool. And it was like a prison cell because they had to slide the food through a little slot. Mm. Nobody could come in unless they had that suit. The nurses couldn't come in. If I had a medical emergency, hopefully they could get dressed fast and come in there. And then my daughter was in JRTC, my oldest, at this time, and she called me and she said, "Mom, I'm making battalion commander at my high school, which is a first for that high school, and she's a female. And
so I need you to be here to see the ceremony."
And that's exactly. And she's like, "What should I do?" And it was for 24 hours later, and so I called the doctor and I said, "So here's the thing, I'm not missing it.
Yeah.
If I have to stand in the back and have my husband put cones around me, I'm not missing this. I am leaving against medical whatever."
Right.
And he's like, "No." And I said, "Either you let me leave or I'm walking out.
Right. I'm not a prisoner."
I don't care.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, this is what you have to do. Nobody around you. Your husband can't touch you. Your kids can't touch you." And I was like, "That's fine." So I left and I went and saw that. And then I had to, they did the thing, and they said, "Well, you're still radioactive," or whatever. And people, of course, at the high school, they knew what was going on with me, and they wanted to come over and hug me. And I'm like, you can just wave at me.
Yeah.
From there, you don't want to get sick. It's radiation poisoning is what they would get.
I got the weirdest question. I'm sure it's a dumb question. Had you not worked since December 1st, 2014?
I continued working.
How
I worked all the way through
except when
chemo.
you're radioactive, but
I worked up to 30 hours every week while I was going through chemo.
Feeling like crap.
Yep. I'm sure some of the haircuts were probably not great, but I couldn't sit at home dying.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
So it was kind of a therapy.
It was a thing. In 2015, my manager had actually submitted. She told me that I needed to apply for the Wayne McGlone Foundation, and I didn't know what that was. And she told me it's for stylists. It's for people that work with sport clips, and it's to help you because, as you can imagine, cancer is very costly to have, and because I can't eat things that other people are eating, or I can't do things that other people are doing, and I have to have special stuff, and I have to have
the medical costs.
Costs. And I was like, okay, you could submit it and do whatever. And she's...
And you hadn't known about it at all.
I didn't know what it was. I had
Thank
no
goodness
idea.
she did. She had been paying attention
She
as
had
a
been paying
manager, so
attention.
that's...
And she handed me the brochure, and she's like, just request the most. At most they can say, we can't do that much, or maybe they will, or whatever it is, but just do this. And she wrote a letter about my condition, and then my area coach, April, who I met at class but really didn't know, wrote a letter about me as well. And I actually received the funds from the foundation, and twice actually.
Wait, what?
So
I've never heard of that.
They gave me the max amount the first time, and then when I went through radiation and was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, they gave me another check.
You know what it was? You were 1% of the recipients.
The 1%.
Yeah. So I've
1%.
never, like I said, I've never heard of that. So it's 99% of people only get it one time.
Right.
But
it was the coolest thing in the world, because it came when, my husband, I had to finally stop working because I just couldn't. Walking was hard. Using my hands was hard. Everything just became such a chore. And so it came at the perfect time and was able to help us with the bills. That was the biggest thing, was if I was going to die, I needed to make sure that my family didn't struggle. So that was I'm very thankful.
Well, I would personally, I don't get to vote on any of this kind of stuff, but for all I know, you could be the third, the fourth, the person that gets it the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, into your 80s. I wish we could make some sort of policy for you with everything that you'd been through. And
it really was. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I counted on. It was really one of those. I didn't want to do it because there are people that need it more. I had a working husband. I was working.
The need it more, or quote unquote deserve it more, or anything like that. No, it's gonna. You needed it, and that's. I'm sure the committee looked it over and said, "Oh, of course, this is."
And that's truly grateful. If I ever met those people, I don't even know what I would say, because it really was a big deal. I still, whether I deserve it or not, I was like, well. There's people that had to quit working a lot sooner than I did, or they did quit working. I'm just stubborn, and I just kept going back and working. No. So I was, it was, couldn't have come at a better time. Yeah. And the nice things that they said about me was very sweet, especially when, April didn't have any idea who I was. She just was going off of what my manager had said. And so, I did the treatment for the thyroid, and that went just fine. They took out the other half, and I didn't have any more issues. There was a period there. The thyroid cancer that I have is rare. It had gone outside of I call it the containment zone. It always makes me think of Jurassic Park, but it had gotten outside of my thyroid in the time from the one doctor telling me that it wasn't cancer to the second doctor saying it wasn't cancer, and then it was. It had actually spread outside of where it should have been. And it's medullary thyroid cancer, which is rare, and you have 80% chance of only living up to 5 years if you have it. 5 to 10 years is what they say. So that kind of put a clock on it. Yeah. And that was in 2016. And then nothing. I have to take chemo pills. I was taking chemo pills, and then in 2017, my husband and I opened a auto shop. He wanted to start working on cars and doing stuff like that, and I wasn't doing anything. So we opened that, and then I wasn't feeling well. And I went to to my oncologist, and she's like, let's do a PET scan where they shoot you up with radioactive material and they scan your body. Yeah. And it was almost instant. It was within a couple days, and she's like, hey, it spread, so we need to get you back in need to start. At that time, they just did a different kind of chemotherapy pill. I didn't have to do infusion. And, but I got sick. I lost all my hair again. And
it had grown back.
it had grown.
Yeah. How long had it
Not
gotten?
long.
Yeah.
I kept it short because I was like, I'm not going to take the time. And so I lost all my hair again. And it took about 6 months. And then I was okay. We ended up selling the shop. And I was looking for something. I was like, well, I'm very loyal to people who help me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to go back to Sport Clips. I was like, I can't think of a better company to work for that actually cares, that really does care. My manager had already moved on. She had moved to the Cayman Islands, and I didn't really know anybody.
She did so well at Sport Clips. She's just like, I'm going to retire.
I'm just going to retire and go to the Cayman Islands. And only one person was left that I had worked with at the shop that I was working at in Fort Collins. And I was like, well, I'm just going to start fresh. I don't want to go back to a shop where I found out that I was sick. I just kind of want to cut that and just move on. And so I started working at the Longmont, where I currently am.
What's the store number again?
CO 130.
130, okay.
And started working there in August, September of 2017. Makes sense. Yes, because a year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 2017. And then was assistant manager within 2 weeks of starting there. And then, some things here and there, I fell and broke my wrist in February of last year. The chemo has made my bones
right.
And I had fallen and it had broke at a diagonal and then back down this way. So it was like at a weird 7 thing.
And you kind of need your wrist to be a stylist to cut hair.
Yeah, and it's my right one. So I had to have surgery in February. And then in October of last year, my knee was really hurting. And so I went in and there was cancer tissue around my knee. And my meniscus was torn. I didn't know this. My meniscus was torn. My kneecap had come loose from where it sits and was all the way over on the left side. And my knee had been locking. And so I figured something was going on there. So in October, I had, they basically just fixed my meniscus, moved my kneecap back, tethered it or whatever, and sent me on my way. But a week after that surgery, my knee started locking again. And so I had to go back in. In November, I had a tibia tubercle osteotomy. I learned the whole word so I could sound professional. They basically...
I'm impressed.
Thank you. I had a femur graft. I had my knee moved back. They broke my tibia and my kneecap and then reset them together. I was back at work a week after with the brace in.
Gosh.
Actually, all 3 of my surgeries. With my wrist, I had the wrist brace on and was still cutting hair a week after. The first surgery with my knee a week after, and then this major one a week after. Because I'm stubborn and I don't listen to the doctors.
And you're strong mentally.
Yes. And
physically.
Yeah. And then I found out in January that the cancer was back again right after my husband's birthday. And they were like, unfortunately, this is probably going to keep happening. I have an expiration date. That's just what it is. And so...
As do we all.
Right.
It's just
right.
whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And yours has more challenges along the way that you keep rising up and facing.
Yeah. And so I started chemo. And there's nothing to do surgery on. They can't remove anymore. So it's basically a treat and comfort situation than a cure.
Well,
that's where I'm at now.
Here's and we're getting ready to do something fun, by the way.
Fantastic.
It's been heavy.
Yes, it's a lot.
This is probably the most in-depth cancer conversation that I've heard. So thank you for sharing that entire story. But this is your first convention. We're at the Sport Clips annual convention, first huddle. We call it huddle.
Yeah.
So we're getting ready. When we wrap this up, we're going to take a selfie.
Okay.
And I'd like to post it. And then if you are willing, for whoever sees my post and is here, do you want a high five? Do you want a fist bump? Do you want a hug? What do you want them to do when they see you?
Whatever they're comfortable with doing.
Is there one that you prefer? Do you hate huggers? Or,
I'm not a big hugger.
Okay, so no, it won't be a hug.
I've had random people hugging me the entire time I've been here. So it's a little odd when I don't know who they are, but I mean, fist bump is great. I'm with you, girl. You got this. Is always empowering to see. The two types of people are the ones that want to hug me, the ones that want to know all about me. They want to have a beer with me. They want to, they want to be in my circle. And then there are the ones that are scared to death to come anywhere near me because they know that they're mortal. And when you're in a place in Vegas, it's really hard to
that's
party.
where the convention is.
It's hard to party when somebody's sitting next to you that's dying.
Reminding you that time is ticking.
Yes. And it's even weird. They'll give me some weird looks when I'm sitting there drinking a beer and they're like, "Can you do that? Is that a thing that you can actually?" It is a thing.
Can you enjoy life?
I can.
How does that work?
Yeah. I refuse to quit. I have 4 children and a husband that depend on me daily, and I have 0 time to be sick.
Well, like I said, your story's been amazing. I love the fact that you're here with me today, and thanks for making it this far. And not, are you sure people in Vegas might be avoiding you because maybe it's the radioactive? They're still worried. Yeah, so there might be a little bit of some people that they're like that.
Might be. I've also gotten the I look like a scary biker thing with the do rag and I have tattoos, and so I've been wearing. Tank tops.
They're worried you're going to beat them up. Is really what it is.
That's what it is.
They're not so. They're holding their wallets and their purses closer to them. No, I'm just kidding.
It could be.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
I got 10 questions to wrap this up and get you thinking a little bit. So just randomly off of the top of your head.
Okay.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Invisibility.
Okay. For the reason you just explained, or already before that?
Because I think it would be fun to randomly tap people on the shoulder or
freak them out.
Just mess with people. I think it'd be hilarious.
What is your personal motto?
Mine is I am strong, I'm a warrior.
I am strong, I am a warrior. Other than where you live now, where else in the world would you most like to live? Cayman Islands has already been taken.
Okay. Anywhere in the world would be Italy.
Oh, I love Italy. It's my favorite non-American country. Who's a celebrity you'd most like to meet one day?
That I haven't met?
Yes.
Okay. Reba McEntire.
Oh, Reba. Heck yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Which words or phrases do you most often overuse?
Dude.
Dude? Okay.
I say dude a lot.
And I think you've been good on this podcast. I'll check the transcript. I think you've been good. What sound or noise do you love to hear?
My children. Anything. Whether they're
even
fighting.
If they're fighting?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I'm here to hear it.
All right. Yes. Excellent. And then what sound or noise do you hate? Gets on your nerves.
Children crying. Or babies crying.
Babies crying. That aren't your own, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Can't do it.
Well, hey, we're at Huddle. You won't hear any babies. Although, I don't know. Edward Logan has his kids here, so just
it's funny
we'll
that
put up
Vegas.
With
there's a lot of babies here in Vegas, and I've heard it a lot since I've been here.
But not at Huddle. You'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be good.
Yeah, trust me. If you could have had any other profession other than your own, what would it have been that you've been good at?
That I have done in the past.
No, that you think you would have been good at. What profession that you hadn't tried?
I think maybe UFC fighter.
Oh, nice. I mean, you would have kicked butt. Can you imagine?
Think so.
With your drive?
I think so.
The greatest achievement in your life has been?
To be a mom. I mean, that's probably my biggest achievement, to be... my kids are amazing. So I've achieved great success with my children.
I love that answer. All right, last question. If heaven indeed exists, what do you hope to hear when you walk through the pearly gates?
Your children and your husband are going to be just fine.
Ah, that's sweet. Hey, you are so strong and amazing and lovely. This has been, I expected 20 minutes. This has been the best hour of my week, just to get to hear what you're doing. Not what you've been through, but what you're doing to make it this far. And I, like you said, something's going to get you one day. I hope I hope we're together in our 80s and 90s and talking about, hey, remember that podcast we did when they had that thing? So
I'm trying.
Yeah,
that's my goal.
Yeah, let's commit to that,
okay.
Right? Sounds and if people see you at Huddle, I'm hoping we're going to go for the fist bumps.
Fist bumps work for me.
Fist bumps and what? You go, girl, or
you go, girl, or here's a beer on me.
Okay. Oh, all right. There we go.
That works.
Okay, that works too. Thanks everybody for joining us on this special edition. It's been a pleasure to hear from Kriss, and what an amazing part of Sport Clips that she is. Thanks, you're a Hall of Famer.
Thank you.
All right. That was awesome.
All right.
Way to go.
Thank you.
I'm serious. That was way more in depth than I had anticipated.
Sorry, it's a lot.
No, it's your life.
Yeah.
I mean, I got tired listening to all that you had to go through.
It's a lot.
I'm going to come take a picture.